Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 70th episode of the Exploring Anti-Natalism podcast, a podcast all about the subject of anti-natalism, created by anti-natalists. My name is Amanda Oldphan Sukenick, formerly known as Efil Films on YouTube, and today I'm speaking with anti-natalist, EFIList, and pro-mortalist YouTuber, Efil Blaise. Welcome to the Exploring Anti-Natalism podcast, Blaise.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to talk to you.
The honor is all mine. Thank you for coming. This is great. Blaise, I'm really excited to speak with you today. You are a pretty new addition to the Antinatalist and EFIList YouTube family. You really haven't been making videos too long at all, but I think it's safe to say you've made a very strong impression on pretty much everyone that's encountered you. Your videos are exceptionally powerful, very, very moving. You're really producing some of the strongest EFIList content that I've seen in a long, long time. And I know you probably don't know who Jay Sounder is. You probably aren't familiar with the name My Misery and Me, but you remind me a lot of Jay. And for those out there that know who that is, I think you'll probably agree. You're like a younger, angrier Jay Sounder, and that's been a very nice voice from the past in a new form come to visit us again, like the spirit of an old version of EFILism alive again in a younger person. So I thank you for that. I want to take just a quick moment before we begin to recommend some of the other recent appearances that you've made, that Blaise has made on other channels. I highly recommend everyone go check out Blaise's conversation with Collapsing with Casey. And that was a wonderful video called Efil Blaise will both break and steal your heart. And it's true. As well as his appearance on the Right to No Longer Exist podcast, episode 9. And I do it with Danny and Kevin. And I do apologize I couldn't make it to that again. But yes, those are both exceptional conversations, and there will be links below to both. So let's begin. Let me begin by asking you some of the more basic questions that I ask some version of to all of my guests, starting with, who is Efil Blaise?
It's like Efil Blaise is an idea, so to speak, in this brain, right? The brain that was born in a third world in Pakistan, just crappy conditions, abusive parents, all that, and just stepping out of all the indoctrination, all the programming that was just shoved in this brain's head, and just realizing that they're selling life. This is not they're selling a bad story. It's not a overall good thing, because I used to see stuff like, here I'm in my car with my dad. There are beggars, children just begging, and right next to me there's a guy in a car which is like $400,000-$500,000, and I'm like, these two things are together. It's unacceptable to me. That's just unacceptable. And then I went into more of the, I started to realize that, hey, the animals have the same brains. They're doing the same stuff. All this religious crap is just bullshit of, they're here for us so you can eat them and all that. And I was like, this is bullshit. They're screaming in pain. That's enough evidence for me to say, they're as equal as value as a human sentient animal. So after that, I became vegan. I understood the whole, like deconversion from religion. Then I became vegan. I understood the whole animal argument that, they're being tortured for my consumption and unnecessarily. Then I kept going down, like logically, my principle was harm, suffering is bad. It should be prevented at all costs. Nothing justifies it. We're doing nothing here that justifies even a pinprick of pain. Nothing. So that was my principle. And the more I, looked into philosophy and read David Benatar, then I watched Mendham videos, and I read Jiwan Hong's article of Pro-mortalism, I came to the conclusion that either one is pro-life or one is pro-mortalist. And I think that's the key distinction. Either one wants this to perpetuate whatever this is, whatever one believes it to be, or one wants it to cease to exist. Now, the key thing for me is it will cease to exist anyway. So the only question is, why the fuck prolong it? And I have yet to find an answer for why life is necessary in the universe. There's no answer to that. So yeah, that's Efil Blaise, is this idea, this brain, these programmings, just, you know, keeping consistency and logic as the prime things. Not emotions are a part of this brain, because yeah, I'm a human too. But when we're gonna make the big picture decisions, we have to put the emotions out, and there's logic and there's bullshit. That's it.
Hearing you talk with Casey, with Joey about you know, growing up in Pakistan and some of the things that you witnessed, I mean, it's no wonder, you know, that you would, I mean, but so few do, you know, that's a really surprising part. But you witnessed some horrible things. I mean, you don't have to repeat them here. People can go listen to it there unless you want to talk about it. But you know, I can't imagine having some of what you've experienced be the experience of my childhood, and it would get me to Efilism pretty fast, you know, with a little help, for sure. Interestingly enough, I was just curious, are you aware that there are actually 4 Pakistani antinatalist Facebook groups? Have you been a part of any of those?
I knew one. I was in that, but then I don't know. It was very, you know, like very silent. You know, there weren't much. So I just like, this is not for me.
They're pretty inactive. So yeah, no, I was just curious. Yeah. So you're in, if you don't mind me saying, you're in Hungary now and you're studying. Yeah. What are you studying, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm studying this business management, and yeah, it's a bullshit degree. I just use this to get out of that shithole Pakistan, because this was my only chance. And if I would have stayed there more, I don't even know what I've done. Like, because here's one thing, right? Ever since my whole life, you know, I've been looking at all the inequities and, you know, just these bullshit religious traditions where they just take an animal and sacrifice it right in front of you to get the bad eye out and all these superstitious nonsense. So, and I was like, yeah, they're controlling it, because I can't even be an open atheist back there, right? It's a very risky thing. So I'm like, yeah, the best is for me, if I would have been there, the best would be like ever since I was 11, 12, I just wanted to check out. I was like, nah, fuck this. And even when I was indoctrinated in the religion, the Islamic religion, I understood this, like, because my brain goes linear. It doesn't stay in between. It goes linear through. And I was like they're selling me this heaven story. And if you die, you go to heaven, you get 72 virgins, you get all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, wait a minute. Why don't I just check out now, repent and check out now and go to heaven? If I actually believe this, why don't I just do that? But then I realized, wait a minute, suicide is prohibited. I was like, this is the catch. Yeah, they realized this sooner. They realized that, yeah, if somebody was going to take this to the logical extreme, they're going to check out. So they put suicide as a prohibition. And I've been so, like, the thing that pisses me off the most is these assholes thinking that, yeah, no, like, life is good. Why do you want to kill yourself? And that statement is just, for me, it really triggers me, because I have a lot of good reasons why one should, and if one wants to, there are a lot of good reasons to check out, and we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. I don't disagree. There's a lot of good reasons. I mean, we're constantly in harm's way. We put other things in harm's way. Blaise, why are you an antinatalist? Why are you an EFIList? And why are you a pro-mortalist? I mean, you've talked a little bit about that already, but you can kind of go down that list and define them.
Yeah, I'll start with this quote from, I don't remember the name, but I forgot, but it goes like this: sleep good, death better, but the best of all is to not be born. You know, it goes like this, something like, it's not exactly, but it goes like this. So the key thing is that I'm an anti-natalist because I understand that there's no point, there's no need for life in the first place. And as a rational being who has experienced consciousness, I can understand that these experiences are decidedly in two categories, negative and positive, right? And at the end of the day, it's just the numbers game, how much negative experiences happened and how many positive experiences happen. And once you look at Earth, there's just so much negative, especially when you include in the wild animals and the insects. You're like, this is a really bad train. This is really, really fucked. So the for me it was, you know, I don't uh, I don't see any reason to risk sentient welfare. That's why I'm an anti-natalist, because I don't see any reason to risk sentient welfare. That's why I'm an EFIList, and that is why I'm a pro-mortalist too. Because the longer this a sentient being is around here, the more it is at the risk of suffering. And what could it be? And more importantly, infliction of the suffering, because you can't have a good life, you know, your own homeostasis won't be maintained unless you are causing harm to some others. And that's what you explained very good in the Efilist movie too. And yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
a killer for me. So yeah, that's why I don't have the arrogance to say, yeah, the future is uncertain, anything can happen. I don't have the arrogance to say, yeah, let's risk it, let's be reckless and let's keep marching in this. No, I'm going to be risk averse and say, no, fuck this. This is this is a risk that cannot be justified, because at the first place there is no reward. Everybody dies in the end anyways. So for me, it's the most stupid thing one can do, to sentence some sentient to this pointless pointless life journey to nowhere.
Yeah, beautifully said, 100%. I mean, so when did this journey to antinatalism, efilism, and pro-mortalism begin for you? Like, how did you first discover antinatalism, and when did you start, watching Amendum videos and finding, antinatalist, efilist YouTubers? When did that all start for you?
The first video that I watched, that was like, I used to watch a lot of these atheist versus theist debates, and all this philosophy and fallacies and skeptic dictionary and all that. I used to go on all that stuff, and then I saw a video of Earthling about every argument against veganism, right? And I was sold out, because there was just no logical argument to evade it. So like after that, I just kept watching those videos, and I came across a Glenos video, and it was about anti-natalism. I was like, I did not know the word at that time, but the concept was still in my head, because in Pakistan, I was seeing these poor people having children. I'm like, they can't even feed themselves. Why are they having 10 children? So I was already on this overpopulation stuff, that we shouldn't be having kids. I was already like, yeah, I'm never gonna bring someone here. What the fuck is this? Because I actually lived the reality of the third world. Like, what the fuck? Is like, especially being a woman over there, you're like, it's really bad. So I saw, like, this was 4 years ago. Yeah, I saw a Glenos video, and I went to his channel and I saw all his stuff, and I was like, yeah, this is some good stuff. This is some true shit here. And from there, I found in Mendham and David Benatar, and I derived energy, and I started to watch more videos of Mendham, and I was just like, this guy, the passion this guy has for the victims, for for preventing the victims, that passion really moved me. And I started to get involved in the Reddit community of anti-natalism and efilism, and I started to just comments and do all this, write posts and all that, to try to just, because I your videos and in Mendham, the EFIList just moved me a lot, and I
Thank
was
you.
that is a very important message. And I watched one video of Humane Hancock, which was the vegan blind spot.
Right.
And that about the wild animal suffering. And I was like, fuck this. We gotta press the red button as soon as we can. Because this if it perpetuates even a day, it's way too much suffering. Way too much suffering. And that's where I think the Promortalist, I read Jiwon Hong's article, which was like, I couldn't escape the logic of once you take the pill of better never to have been, I don't think one can escape the better to no longer be pill, you know, and one doesn't have to be necessarily against death, you know, one can just recognize that an earlier death is better than a later one because of the asymmetry of pain and pleasure. And the more you are in this game, you are constantly rolling the dice. And when you check out, when sentience checks out, there's no risk. So no risk, no loss. It's very simple to me. And that's why I go with the Promortalist conclusion. I see Efilism as the dissection, the philosophical dissection of sentient reality. And I see the conclusion as Promortalism, that it should end. Like, it shouldn't be like, yeah, we can make it better. I mean, yeah, you can, obviously, if it's better, it's better, but it's only better if you can compare it to some worse, right? So 8 billion human beings suffering is better than 9 billion human beings suffering, right? So we can just keep playing this game. I want the end. I want the end to happen, and I want it to happen as soon as it can. But then I come into the whole futility thing of how likely it is human beings are going to do it, because they still haven't even realized that animals suffer. They still haven't realized that. So yeah, it feels very discouraging when you look at what human beings value. But still, that doesn't change the fact, the truth. The truth is, if life perpetuates, suffering perpetuates. If life ceases to exist, suffering ceases to exist. Very simple.
Well, I mean, look, I don't disagree on many levels of that. I mean, like we were saying before, when the machine is on, when we're alive, we're in harm's way, and we cause harm. Both of those things. And when it's off, we're not doing that anymore, and that's better. There's no way of getting around that. And I don't think you can fix life. I don't think there's any way of fixing it. So I think that ending it is the answer. Where I get a little bit, I mean, when it comes down to, I mean, there's a difference, right, between saying that about, all of sentience and all, and our individual lives. So like taking Jiwoon for an example for a second here, like, Jiwoon had reached this conclusion, and I think that he felt, well, I'm supposing, I don't presume to exactly know what was going through Jiwoon's head when he made the decisions that he did, but I presume that he felt like if he didn't go then, that he was somehow being logically inconsistent. And the fact of the matter is, Jiwoon went really badly. I mean, he didn't seem like he had much of a plan. The plan that he had was botched horrifically. So he ended up dying really, really badly over a long period of time. That beautiful, incredible mind that he had, he died horrifically brain damaged. So, I'm just curious what you think about the fact that, like, while he was alive, Jiwoon was this incredible communicator. Yeah. I mean, he probably could have, I mean, I'm not trying to put this much pressure on the life that he had. I mean, but he could have been an incredible voice for the right to die, let's say, for access to reasonable methods. And because he came to this conclusion that there was a certain amount of speed implicit in a pro-mortalist ideal, I kind of am always talking about this idea that pro-mortalism doesn't have a speed or not. Can it be something that you take as a truth about the world? Which I do. I take that as a truth. When the machine is off, you're out of harm's way. I get that completely. But if it has this speed attached to it, where it has to be now, that's where I start to worry about it just a little bit. Because I don't think we should necessarily make the decision to die badly just because we'll be out of harm's way after a horrific death. What do you think about that?
I understand. Like at the end of the day, I see it as just calculations, right? Now, I'm all for like universal right to euthanasia, right to no longer exist, peaceful methods, DIY, easily accessible just everywhere, so that
Absolutely.
people just whoever just having this feeling that the assurance that I have my method and I whenever the time comes, I'm going to check out, right? That I agree with all of that. What you say about speed is like, it's not necessary that, I talk about this in my videos as well. It's not necessary that, I'm pro-mortals, I have to kill myself right now. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to be realistic,
right.
And you have to do the calculations, right? So I can say it in this way, like you can do some pro-mortalism activism, and before you check out, you take 500 people with you. You convince them too that, yeah, it's better. Like if somebody listens to my videos and says, yeah, hey, you make a really good argument that if I check out, I prevent my own suffering and the suffering that I will cause, and I don't see any reasons to do that, so I'm going to check out too. So you take more people with you, that's a bigger win, right? So again, it's at the end of the day, it's the calculations. If you can exist, the principle is, I would say, negative utilitarianism. If you can exist and your existence will overall cause less, prevent more harm than it will cause, yeah, then you should, even if you're a pro-mortalist, you should exist. But we can't do these calculations, right? Because even in that case, I can say maybe you can fail, and all the suffering that you caused, that was wasted, right? So I like to the distinction that you made between sentience as a whole and as an individual. I like to focus more on the sentience as the whole, because of these little things, right? If I check out now, maybe like if I would have stayed even longer, I could have prevented more suffering, because the game is still going on, right? So because of these messy questions that we can't give complete answers to, because the uncertainty of the future is, we have probabilities, but we can't be certain, and any dystopia could happen. So as a sentience, as soon as it ends, even in June's paper, I read this, that if you press the button and it ends sentience, yeah, I think that's the pro-mortalist, this sentience argument for pro-mortalism, that it ends, it's better. And even with the, the blue button that I speak about, that you press it and it sterilizes the whole planet, even that is pro-mortalism, because it will end it, right? If there's no reproduction, then there's no replication of life, then there's no life. So it's a slowed version of pro-mortalism, but the principle is still pro-mortalism, negative utilitarianism, recognizing that life will always come at a harm. Now, on an individual basis, it's a much trickier question, but I would say, let's say 7 billion people decide to kill themselves. Why would that be a bad thing? I don't see that as a bad thing. Like if they say, yeah, like if they're convinced of, yeah, we're gonna kill ourselves, but that's good. And we don't need too many humans to fix the sentient problem, right? The animal problem. We don't need 8 billion humans, 8 billion EFILists. We don't need 8 billion EFILists. We just need like 1,000 or 2,000 or 100,000, whatever. And, just do, and we just need to have the resources and, do it right. Make the mess as, reduce the amount of wreck as much as we can. And that brings me to the climate change argument, which is that it's going to end pretty soon anyways. So if somebody is thinking, yeah, it's all hopeless, and yeah, it's like the more I live, the more I cause suffering, and the more I don't know what kind of suffering I could experience. Like, because I think about it in this way, in an individual sense. If I can go back in time and tell my 13-year-old version of myself that, hey, you're going to have this weird chicken pox for 5 days and you're going to suffer horrifically, and I actually make him feel the suffering, they're like, nah, fuck this, I'm checking out. So just being consistent in that way, I would say, yeah, the sooner I go, the better for one sentient. For this one, the sooner it goes, the better. And obviously, you need to have the perfect, like the sure means, because it's about dying. That question is very important. You need to do this thing right. You don't need to risk it, because if you don't die, then you'll be stuck around here, and then you'll suffer more, because they'll put you in a mental ward or stuff, and then you'll be consuming even more resources and inflicting even more harm. So you don't have to hurry about it. You have to do it right. You have to make the decision. You have to get all the, you have to be aware that you should, it ends. It actually ends. It doesn't, like, the risk is minimized for your, resuscitation, for example. So I would say in that context, in an individual context, for most human beings, 99% of human beings, I would say this: if they're dead tomorrow, it's not a problem. I'm just going to be honest.
The example that you gave of if there were 8 million EFILists who decided to kill themselves, would that be a problem? I mean, no, that's the whole population. So that would be by everybody's consent, and it would be fine. Yeah. So yeah, that's perfect. But I mean, we are living in a world where there aren't 8 million EFILists. There's like 8. You know what I mean? And so it does, it does kind of come down to what I was kind of saying to you before we began. Like, and I'm just curious to know your thoughts on this. Like, so for me, I mean, okay, so to my ears, it kind of sounds, and this is not a bad, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but you're kind of putting the pro-mortalism first. And I'm much more identified with being a preventionist. You know what I mean? Like this, like the understanding that we have about the world, the EFILism, the antinatalism, we're kind of rare. You know what I mean? And so when you are a vessel for a certain kind of understanding, like you have a utility in this world that just simply does not exist in most people. And I think the world needs EFILists who are like alive, right, more than it needs EFILists who are dead. And so obviously an individual EFIList or a pro-mortalist or an anti-natalist in my world, has the right to die. If that's a decision that one wants to make, that's the decision one wants to make. And I don't question what somebody else wants to do in response to their own suffering. But at the same time, it's hard in this context of the world we live in to not see the waste in that a little bit.
Yeah. I would say, like, think about it in this way, right? Even like, let's say I could, have an influence in the future, right? I don't necessarily need to be alive for that, right? I can write a book. Like we still read about Chopin. We can read, like Buddha already said all this stuff. Life is suffering. Like, he just didn't say stop having kids. He didn't complete it, the whole thing. He just said life is suffering. Like, just give the conclusion too. But in the, like, the impact thing, right? I think one should be rational about one's impact, right? As an individual, what can you do here, right? I know for a fact, like for a like 99% certain, that we EFIList, we aren't going to convince the Muslims in Pakistan. That's not going to happen. It's going to be either it's going to be war, or it's both of them lose, right? You can't, like, they won't be convinced of the rational argument, because they're stuck in their God delusions, and they're very aggressive about it, and there are too many of them, and they have power. They have the buttons. They have fingers on the button, right? Their own nukes and bombs and stuff. They have missiles. So, like, one has to be rational about one's impact, right? I would say, if there's a collaborate intelligence of EFIList who recognize that, oh, this is a planet, bug planet infestation, let's send it. A collaborate alien intelligence or something, they have the power. Yes, then it's a good reason to, exist and, do do the thing, do research in physics and like neurobiology is, for example, like if you like neurobiology is a field where there like we don't have much why this brain got it and Amanda's brain got it, but the same information was like given to the other brain. That guy is like pro-life, he still doesn't get it. Why is that? So I think research in neurobiology, that would be good, and research in nuclear physics, because that's the closest we can get to the red button. So again, if the goal is ending sentient existence on planet Earth, yeah, that's gonna be more, it's gonna more likely have a positive impact. I mean, if you're principled about the end, right, then yeah, as an EFIList you should live. But like I can't say for sure, because the mess is just so much. It's very hard to change as like in one's lifetime too. You can't change it. And the thing is, I would say these arguments have been made before as well. So they don't get it. We can't change human nature, and that's one of the things I like about in Mendham's argument is the sentient nature works on reward and punishment, right? So unless we reward the good and punish the bad, this shit ain't gonna fix, right? And the thing is that even you can give them these 2+2 arguments, very simple arguments, they still don't care. They care about their comfort. So I one argument that I made with Danny and Kevin in the EFIL studio was, yeah, maybe if we start giving them money, that all right, here EFILism is true, and you give them money, it's like yeah, and they'll make EFIList videos or something. You gotta give the ape a banana, because at the end of the day, these guys are still the most 99% human beings. I mean, that again, I don't have some stats to prove it. This is just my exaggeration, but whatever. Like they operate on their impulses. They don't operate on logic and rationality and empathy. They operate on their impulses, how it will affect them. So that's why I think promortalism is important, because they have to recognize that for them, for that one being, it's better, they should embrace death. It's better that they cease to exist because of the risk of what they can experience and they can cause. So I think that's why promortalism is important, because even with the red button, right, once you're pressing it, you're going out too. It's you're done too. So you have to get over that thing as well, and that's basically promortalism. You have to get over this ego thing that like me personally, I don't have an ego thing of that, oh, I'll live more and I'll fix the world and all that. I know that I can just write stuff, I can document stuff, and I don't need to keep doing the same thing over and over again and hope it'll change, right? I think that's insanity in my opinion. But other than that, I always support EFIList. I always support, like, if watching EFIList videos, people have less kids, yeah, that's a better world than, if they wouldn't have watched those videos. So again, the calculations work, but again, you still have to do the calculations of what the harm is being caused by you, and then you weigh it up, and then you have to, there's a right answer to that. And all this intricacies should make one say, let's get out of here as soon as we can. And I think that's kind of the, people want to have their goals in their life of, I want to do this, I want to accomplish this and accomplish that. They have to recognize that there's nothing to accomplish here. They'll just die later, and the more they live, the more they've piled. The net suffering is just piling up. So another argument that I gave is, we've already lost, in the sense, 600 million years of sentient organisms just feeling pain for no good reason, unnecessary pain. Life is unnecessary. So we've already lost. The only thing we can do now is minimize the future loss, like especially when you look at near to human extinction, and it's all going to end anyways. We individually, we don't have power. We're controlled by capitalist bastards, and they make the decisions, not the EFIList. So one should be rational about all of this context and not just go in this hero thing that, yeah, I'll make the world a better place, because that's very unlikely.
Well, it's not about being a hero, and I do understand what you're saying. There's you have to be rational about what impact your life can have and what arguments and ethics can have. And look, this is certainly not, nobody is saying, and certainly not I'm saying that this is not some incredible uphill battle to try to climb, the impossibility of convincing people. But hell, I mean, you came from that environment and you understood it. I came from the environment I did, and I came to understand it. So these things are not impossible to understand. And you also have to put it in some kind of context of, okay, so antinatalism is an ancient idea, but this is an idea that only had a word attached to it since 2006. So the world is, the dawn of antinatalism and these ideas that are connected to it is only very recent. And we're like the first generation of antinatalists that are actually open, out, in your face, vocal, articulate antinatalists. I mean, there were antinatalists in the past, don't get me wrong, but they didn't have proto NGOs, and they didn't have words attached to it. And it's an identity, that is actualized for the first time in human history, in the way that you and I are and others are. And I just think that there's a difference between cures. Like the red button is a cure. It's a cure for all the problems of sentience, the end of sentience. And so that is a death I am more than willing to embrace. But there's something a little bit uncomfortably natalist in making a certain proclamation of, to take yourself out of it before there's a cure, because some new little Efil Blaise is going to have to be born and come to the same conclusion. Some other little Amanda is going to have to be born. And that is just personally, I feel a little uncomfortable about that aspect of it. And it's not that I think that I can necessarily, I don't think I can cure anything. I don't think that I can fix anything, but I also don't, it makes me uncomfortable that the only other answer at that point is to put it on somebody else who doesn't want it.
The thing is that even let's say like I stop me from coming, like Inventive makes this argument of he can prevent the existence of another Inventive, right? I mean, a lot of people would have watched his videos and didn't have kids, but I'm still here, right? So those guys weren't aware of it, and I still am here. So even if we reduce it, right? Not talking about the end, because as an individual you can't make the red button, right? If I had the power to make the red button, there's nothing like this would be happening I'll just make it in my room and boom, done, end this. So you have to be rational about that. And so it's like, yeah, you can reduce it, you can reduce the amount of Efil Blaise re-emerging again by doing activism right now. But again, it's just reduction. The individual victim who still arrives, for that victim, it's still bad, right? For the individual who's gonna be like, yeah, they were doing anti-natalism activism, but fuck, I'm still here, I'm still fucking stuck, So that's why my concern, my goal is end. My goal is end reduction. My goal is end. If we can end it, good, let's go for it. If we can't, then be rational about what we can do. And then I would say talk like right to die is very important. Is because think about it in this way, right? If I can convince, like, I've got options now. I can convince somebody to become vegan and get a vasectomy and live their life, right? That is a reduction in harm. But if I convince them to check out, I don't need them to go vegan or get a vasectomy, right? So if my goal would be to make people understand that this game is unwinnable and the best is to check out, and a lot of people get it and they start checking out instead of becoming anti-natalist or anything. I think that's overall good. Even in the reduction thing, I think that's an overall good. So if they watch my videos or Inventum videos or whoever, like the problem is how people will interpret it. They'll call you a suicide cult and all that. And I just that's where I draw the line between there's logic and then there's bullshit. There's nothing else. So you either go with the logic or you go with bullshit and lies. So I would say, yeah, even like you can live and be a pro-mortalist activist too, right? You can convince people to let's get out. But even for that, you don't have to live, because I read Juven's article and he wasn't around then. And yeah, I was convinced. But I could say that would be my personal bias, because I just wanted to check out since I was an 11-year-old kid. I was like, fuck this, this isn't for me. So yeah, but I can see the imperative. I can recognize the imperative to stick around and cause cessation, not reduction, cessation. Yes, I can see the imperative for that. But how likely it is you as an individual or 100 EFILists can do it when you're up against these religious, like on one end, there are these religious assholes who think a psychotic God created all this and we're going to follow his rules. On the other end, there are these nihilist, Nietzsche nihilists who think nothing matters. Nothing matters as long as it is not happening to them. And you're like, what do I say? What do I do to?
It's hard. It's not,
Yeah.
There's no easy answer. I would disagree that taking yourself out of the equation is a bigger win than trying to convince, but that'll just have to be a point of contention that we have. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. I did want to ask you real quick, what do you sound like risk is a huge part of your one of the strongest arguments that you take for antinatalism, EFILism, pro-mortalism. But I mean, what do you think of some of the other arguments, like asymmetry and consent, what and risk? Like, what do you feel like there is the strongest one?
I think the risk is the most important, because I think that argument is very easily recognized. Everybody does risk assessment in their life, right? Is it worth doing? Is it not worth doing, right? So they can do this thing when they recognize the main premise that it's all suffering. There's no and that's the asymmetry argument too, that there's no intrinsic good, because of the other argument that I use is the pointlessness of all of this. There's no point in this whole universe. There's no point in any of this. So I think these three arguments are they'll shape the pro-mortalist perspective, that it's pointless, redundant suffering. There's risk if it perpetuates, and it's gonna end anyways. We're all gonna die anyways. Life will cease to exist anyways. So why the fuck prolong it? I think these are very simple three arguments that can make one accept the pro-mortalist position. And the key thing is accepting the fate that once you're alive, you are going to die. That's going to happen anyways. So the only question is, how long are you alive? And is it worth it or is it not worth it? And that applies to not just this one sentient, but all of the sentient, right? So I think I understand why people have this because of this is another thing that I do with the activism, is changing perceptions about suicide. People have this notion that, oh, it's such a bad thing, a sentient being is dead. No, I think they should change their perspective and say, no, it's better. They no longer have to suffer. It's better for that being that it ceases to exist. And it has been. That's very good. That's a net positive, because sorry, that's not a net positive. That's a positive for that being. But you can say that if that being existed, it would have made the world a better place. So then it would be a net negative for that being to cease to exist. But again, you have to do these calculations. And how many people are actually doing that? Like, and that's the main thing, the risk of dystopia of what could happen. Like tomorrow some disease can happen and we can all be, our brains would be getting eaten up and by some parasite or something, and we can suffer for 10 years and then die horrifically. That could happen tomorrow. Again, low probability, but it's on the dice if you are alive. But if you are not alive, there's no risk. I'm saying, I think that's a very strong argument for pro-mortalism, the risk argument. For EFILism too, for anti-natalism too, you don't have to be arrogant and say, yes, I can control this. No, you have to be humble that, no, this is not in our control. These are, like you say, crude forces in control of precious commodities.
Mm-hmm.
Not in our control.
Briefly, like how do you feel that antinatalism intersects, if at all, with other social and ethical issues such as atheism, veganism, and the right to die? I mean, obviously we've talked about the right to die a little bit, and but you have very passionate opinions about atheism too, which I'd love to get into a little bit. So yeah.
I say that if like God is just like a fable, just a story that was created by ignorant human beings who didn't know how the world works, and that's the origin of the story. And I can definitively say that it's bullshit, because like, why would an intelligent God create this huge amount of unnecessary suffering for billions of years, and then just like, yeah, even the intelligent ones are going to die, and then call them to heaven and hell? Like, why not just cut to the chase? That's not an intelligent God, that's a stupid God. So, and why is he hiding? There's no evidence for that. Why isn't he doing these look, why isn't he coming on YouTube right now, or on our Zoom right now, and saying, hey, I am God, I created this world, this is my evidence, this is who I am, I can control your whole thing? Okay, then I would believe in it. But there's just bullshit. So, and the one problem that I have with religion is the pro-life aspect, right? And that's where what my enemies are, the pro-life. So I think one needs to be against this pro-life notion of God created us and we are special. That is such crap a human being can say, in my opinion. So that's like that's just bullshit. So even if somebody's an anti-natalist and a religious person too, I to be honest, I can't take that person seriously, because their basis of the primary argument for their anti-natalism is that, yeah, God, that it's God who said that this is what's going to happen and the doomsday is going to come, or this or that. So yeah, it's better to not have kids because, yeah, doomsday is coming, or some other bullshit like that. Yeah, they're on your side, but there's not the same principle. The principle is still pro-life. If God, if there was something else that would be in their favor, that would favor them, then they would be like, yeah, this pro-life, no, anti-natalism is bad. So I think that's one thing. With religion, it's crap, it's all crap. We should just call it crap. And I'm still very pissed that I can't say this stuff with my friends and in my country, because I'll be stabbed to that horrifically, and that's on the cards too for me personally. I can get a threat and I'm done. Then I'm done. Like, I can go out in a really horrific way.
Yeah, so, no, you face real risks. Yeah. I mean, it's sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say, I mean, a lot of antinatalists in Western countries are in constant fear of like, oh, what if people find out, and what's going to happen? And like, a lot of those risks are imagined. They are. I mean, they're not. They're overblown. But somebody in your position, coming from where you come from, it's very real. So it's a tough situation to be in.
Yeah, and that's one more thing that I come into then we switch to right to die. It's like, it's I feel so pissed when if somebody has this arrogance to say to me, no, you're, what are you saying? Life is bad? How dare you say that? How dare you think life is bad? Why do you want to kill yourself? I just want to punch these fuckers in the face. But again, you got to be rational and, do your thing. So for me, right, to the euthanasia thing is just fucking obvious. It's my body. I get to choose whatever the fuck what I want to do with it. And I don't understand why, like, all these other movements, like the feminism stuff and all that, they're all for rights and all that. And like, why the fuck aren't we talking about this fundamental right? Like, do the numbers. 20 million will attempt suicide, 19 million will fail horrifically, 1 million will succeed, and even those will succeed. They don't go to Switzerland or get an Nembutal. They die horrifically. So why isn't that a top issue? It's just too stupid.
I agree. Yeah.
And now with veganism, I say that, yeah, that's another thing. In my opinion, one has to be aware of the animal argument, because for me, Efilism is more about the wild animal suffering, right? So until they
100%.
can get
Yeah.
the argument of that, hey, animals feel pain and we shouldn't cause them unnecessary pain for our selfish taste pleasures, until they can get that, how will they, like, how will they connect these dots if they're missing all these main targets? So I think all three of them are very important in recognizing the truth that that sentient existence is fucked. That's the truth.
How long? May I ask, how long have you been vegan?
I've been vegan for 2.5 years now.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay,
Yeah.
I've been going for 6.
I was in Pakistan. I like intellectually I went vegan way before. Like, this is bullshit. Because I was staying with my family, and my family were like, hey, what? You don't want to kill animals? What? God said that you have to eat meat and this and that. And then you get the whole, oh, what about protein and all this bullshit argument. And then my mom was pissed that, hey, like I just felt so fucking angry at them. They're like, at first they were like, why don't you eat vegetables? And now you're eating vegetables, and said, hey, no, like, you're supposed to eat meat because God says so, and this and that. And I just, like, I can't stay over there. So I used to, like, my meat consumption was very low, but like the cross contamination and sometimes milk and stuff. So I wouldn't call myself vegan on that time, but in practice, but intellectually, I was. I still argued for it. I still showed other people the videos of what was happening in the slaughterhouse. And that's one more thing. Like, people want to take it all personally. Like, you don't necessarily have to be a vegan to say what's happening to animals is wrong. You don't necessarily have to be that. You just have to. It's not. The argument isn't about the person who's making the argument. It doesn't matter if the person is hypocrite. What matters is it logical and is it true? Are there facts that verify it? And yes, obviously, animals have central nervous system, pain receptors, consciousness. They scream. They itch they scratch their itches, for fuck's sake. And these people are still gonna say no.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm glad you're making this point. Not enough people make this point at all, because people get so wrapped up in what the individual can and can't do, which, look, everybody that can go vegan should go vegan. This is not an argument against that in any way, shape, or form. But what happens to a lot of people is that they get there intellectually first. They have trouble getting there as far as changing their behavior. And then they get ridiculed for not being able to change their behavior. And so they go backward intellectually. And that's what we got to prevent. We got to prevent people from going backward intellectually first, because, look, let's grandfather out bad behaviors. Like, maybe the biggest thing is that the next generation of kids aren't meat eaters.
Exactly.
Because don't worry so much about punishing the addicts that exist today. It's about not creating new addicts in the future. Would you agree?
Exactly. Just like the smoking thing, like, I could be smoking cigarettes and I'm like, yeah, it's bad. Nobody should, like, no kid should be exposed to it. No, we should discourage that behavior. Even if I'm smoking, again, that's one of the problems. I don't have this ego notion that, hey, am I being the perfect one? Am I being perfect? No, that's like, humans are imperfect. We're very fickle creatures. We are not consistent. We don't operate on logic. We operate on emotions and all this stuff. So that what needs to be put aside when we're talking about these real issues like animals suffering in the slaughterhouses. It shouldn't be like, hey, but are you vegan? It shouldn't be like that. It should be like, let's end this. Let's find a way to end this. Let's find a way to discourage this. Let's make it expensive. Get into solutions rather than this personal bullshit of, hey, but I saw you eating meat the other day. Who the fuck cares? This is so myopic. This is so myopic thinking. And when you factor in the wild animals, the number of animals in the wild, it just like it gives me goosebumps. I'm like, what the fuck is going on this planet? And they think it's all okay. It's all okay to walk in this dead. There's nothing here but death every day. And this is one of the things, right? They say to me that you're, in the pro-mortalist argument, I give the red button argument. They say, but you're imposing death. Tomorrow there's going to be so much death, and it keeps on happening for years and years and years. So you're saying I am accepting those imposition of death, but I won't accept this final imposition that will end the cycle of death that happens on this planet. So it's like people just don't get it, and it sometimes pisses me off. But again, I just be rational, and
Oh no, it drives me crazy too. I mean, obviously, I kind of brings me to my next question. So, I mean, sometimes antinatalism or anti-procreation, let's say, is broken up into 4 schools of thought. We've talked about antinatalism, we've talked about Efilism, but then there's child-free, which I'm curious to know your thoughts on. But then there's vehement, and I'm very curious to know your thoughts on that, because in my opinion, the worst outcome, pretty much, that we could possibly, engineer is that we go, but we leave the animals here. Now, I'm pretty sure you agree with that. I'd like to know what you think about that. But I mean, that to me is the greatest dereliction of duty we could possibly find ourselves being guilty of. That the bottom line is, yes, human beings are horrible, but our extinction isn't free. It has to include the other sentient creatures. And so, there's a lot about vehement that I really like. I mean, I love Last Night, and I love a lot of the activism that they've inspired. I mean, there's a lot of very good aspects to what they've done, but that final conclusion of theirs is just a real tough one for me. So anyway, I'd love to hear you talk about vehement and child-free a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
When it comes to child-free, I'll tell you what, we were talking about impacts and all that. I would say, if the goal is to have less children, right? Freedomism is a very, very a good approach, because people operate on this profit thing, right? You can explain to them, hey, if you have a kid, it's going to be an unnecessary expense to you. Why the fuck do you want to do that? Go enjoy your life and travel or whatever, right? So they can understand it in this way. They don't care about the truth that if you have a being, it will experience suffering and die. They don't care about that. They only care about what they can get out of it. So if you can convince people of being child-free more than you can convince them of being anti-natalism. And that's just how I look at human nature now. And when it comes to vehement, it's yes, I agree that humans are full of fucking shit. They just cause more fucking mess. But let's say there are no more humans, and you just do the numbers again. Just one human left. You're just a human left, and you're just doing the numbers, and all the context of how many beings, sentient vertebrates, are going to die. And there are quintillions of them, and that's the biggest problem. Human caused suffering, and human suffering is, like in Mendham says, 0.0000001% of the problem on the planet. The problem is like the oceans, the insects. There's an ant war going on right now. Right now, there's a billion, trillions of ants just fighting over shit. And yes, they have neurons too, right? So they're also they should be also in our consideration. So like I would say with vehement is like if a lot of people go, like 7 billion, yeah, 7 billion human beings gone, okay, or if 7.9 billion human beings gone, okay, but there's still got to be some left to do the red button thing, because that's the most important thing.
Well, does it, so let me ask you this. So we're going to get into properly the pro-mortalist topic in a second, but I mean, do you think that, I mean, the red button doesn't exist. It probably will never exist. Do you think that's the only possible path towards extinction? I mean, that's, you know, it's you know, that would, I mean, that would be great. I mean, the nice thing about the red button is that it's, well, obviously there's a lot of versions of the red button. So let me just say that. I mean, there really are a lot of versions to this thought experiment, but in the one where it just appears and you press it and it's an instantaneous end of the universe, I mean, that's the perfect solution as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what, you know, what right does anybody have? Look, I take consent seriously, but I cannot understand how anybody would have the right in that circumstance to stand up and say no, you know, in the face of causing that much peace and cure at that point. So, I mean, yeah, but I mean, the fact of the matter is we're probably not ever going to have that. So what do you see other paths towards extinction?
I would say, like, if somebody has a better solution, like the red button thing, the closest we have is like red button is like very, you know, real close to reality because we have the nukes now. But again, I'm open to some better solution. If somebody has some, you know, some solution where they can you know, just gas the whole planet and all sentient beings go to sleep, yeah, sure, let's do that, and then blow it up afterwards, you know. So again, it's the extinction. What I think now realistically is going to happen is climate change will get humans out first. Human habitat is going to be lost, and because humans have a lot of nuclear power plants, human beings have made all these nuclear power plants, they're going to stay here. And because humans going out, heat, the temperature is going to increase, and these power plants are going to melt, and then the stratospheric ozone is going to be wiped out, and the sun will just torch everything on this planet. So yeah, I really probabilistically there won't be any life on this planet just because of the climate change, what we have done to the climate, what the, you know, industrialization has caused. So yeah, that's the red button is already happening. So there's no, like, people get afraid of it. We already have the nukes, or unless we, you know, start nuking each other ourselves because of some war or something, so even that will end it. What I'm trying to get to a solution is that, for me, the best would be we have the right euthanasia globally everywhere, and, you know, like, people have the bottle of control, the Nembutal, with them at their place, and once the time comes, once they start eating each other, cannibalism happens because there's no food. So yeah, then you just take it and get out. And like, I don't think they'll ever come together to some engineering solution, which is what I say we should invest, you know, research in nuclear physics to get to a solution that just ends it all the best we can. So the thing is, even if, like, I would say a different version of red button, let's say I press the red button and there's 1 year of suffering, and then it will end. I'm taking that too. I'm taking that 1 year as well. Because I know if it perpetuates for 2 years, there's more net negative.
Yeah, I mean, I have, and I probably will again. I'm sure I do make the argument that anything is worth it all being over. I mean, you know, so I get that completely. But I do hope that if humanity if extinction does become the focus of humanity, which I don't really think that it will, unfortunately, it absolutely should. But if it does, it should be our priority to try to engineer the most graceful extinction possible. And I don't pretend to know exactly what that would look like.
I
Do
I would say first
Yeah.
things first, like free sterilizations, free euthanasia,
Yeah.
and the babies that are going to be born tomorrow, all of them sterilized. First things first. Let's first get these things done, right? Get these simple things done. That everybody has a right to check out whenever they can. So when the shit hits the fan, they can just take their pill and just go out of the game. So that's first things first. Now in the whole solution of how to blow up the planet, I don't think they'll ever do it, because they'll be out. Human beings are going to be out before, and then just like when the nuclear power plants melt and the sun just torches the whole planet, it's just going to be.
Before we get to that, though, I mean, would you institute? I mean, if you were in charge, you weren't going to go to the red button plan just yet. Would you institute
if I was in charge, I would say let's do it tomorrow.
Right, I know. Okay, but let me just say, what role, if any, in your extinction plan would antinatalism play? So would you do any amount of phased extinction through cessation of procreation?
If there's a like I talked about sterilization, right? Like we sterilize as many beings as we can before. Okay, but again, it's about the end. Like if it's an instantaneous death, right? Then there's no need to even sterilize them, right? They're gonna go. So why? But the thing is, that's the distinction between perpetuation of life and cessation of life. Why do we actually need this to be slow, right? Why do we actually just need to, all right, just don't have kids and live your life?
Well, because I don't think we're going to have access to an instant end. I think that's a complete I don't think we have enough nukes, at least at this point, to cause an instantaneous end. So there are so again, I'm doing the calculations. How little suffering can we cause? Now these are difficult. If you take it slow, actually the chances of suffering increase tremendously, because you're talking about perhaps several generations going by. You're talking about more generations of animals ripping each other apart. So fast is always better. Don't get me wrong. If we had access to the red button instantaneous end, that's the one that I would choose any goddamn day of the week. But at the end of the day, the suffering still matters. Like how much suffering are we going to cause in the interest of the end? And for me, the idea that we can't end pain and suffering without causing pain and suffering sucks. Like that is that. I mean, as I've gone through the course of my own journey with antinatalism, that is the fact that informs my desire never to bring anybody here. Why I don't think anybody should ever bring anybody here, because there's no way of curing this thing without consent violation. There's no way of curing this thing without causing pain and suffering. It just sucks every bit of the way without that perfect red button negative utilitarian solution, which we just may never have. So again, it does come down to this engineering problem for me of how to do it well. Like, what does ethical extinction look like in the absence of a perfect solution?
I would say the key thing one has to recognize is it's going to happen. It's going to be death by 1,000 cuts, where everything is going to go extinct.
Yeah, but that sucks. See, that's natural extinction, or that's extinction through the sloppiest means necessary. So that's not ethical. So it's gonna. So if that's the way it happens, okay, fine, it's finally over. Fuck it. I mean, if that's the only way that it's possible, okay, but I can't put a positive on that. It's positive at the end of the day when it's all over, but every little bit of it before that's going to absolutely fucking suck.
You can't put a positive on that, because we could have done it better. We could have done it intelligently. Yeah. Instead of leaving matters in nature's hand, we could leave matters in intelligence.
Yeah. And that's what I would love to see happen. It probably will not. I don't, I don't doubt that it won't. It won't. Probably won't. But that's Efilism to me, is how you do it right. And that's that
you have to do it right. Yeah. I agree. I'm 100% with you on that.
So, I mean, I think that at this stage of the game, pro-mortalism is an umbrella term. You know what I mean? Everybody's got like this very exacting idea of what it is, you know, but you know, and I don't in any way claim to be any kind of expert on what it is. I'm just somebody that's kind of like, you know, I didn't hear the term pro-mortalism until around like 2017. And I don't know why, because it certainly was around before then. And it is used in Better Never to Have Been, actually, in one circumstance. And it was at one point kind of used as like a pejorative term for EFIList, you know, it was like, and it by anti-natalists. So it was this, you know, a lot of anti-natalists have this like desire to cut themselves away from EFILism, as you well know, and so they'd call us pro-mortalists. We're pro-mortalists. We're nasty, evil pro-mortalists, and that could never be what anti-natalism is. But as it turns out, an accusation, you know, as it's sometimes offered, of pro-mortalism on top of antinatalism has been within the literature for a long time. A lot of academics have made an accusation, quote unquote, of pro-mortalism for a long time. So it's just kind of funny that the buck ended up kind of getting passed to EFILists. So Benatar does use it in Better Never to Have Been in chapter 6. He uses it as a distinction between killing extinction and dying extinction. So I'm going to quote that real quick. He says, "Were anti-natalists to become pro-mortalists and embark on a species-side program of killing humans, their actions would be plagued by the moral problems that would not be faced by dying extinction." That's on page 196. So he's using it there in a way that's a little bit similar to the way you're using it, where perhaps that could mean a red button kind of situation. But it's not used in that way for a long time after that point, which is interesting. And then Christopher Belshaw, who Mark and I interviewed on the podcast, episode 34, he defines it as for death, the very, very, very broad definition. So I think, you know, you're probably kind of in line with that. Daily Negativity defines it as death is good for the one who dies. So that would more be like but he doesn't think that pro-mortalism has anything to do with suicide, interestingly. That's not, it's more of a, you know, it's more of a philosophical statement about, you know, not existence being a good thing, but that doesn't there's no requirement, or there's no carryover, let's say, towards suicide necessarily for the pro-mortalist. Anyway, I mean, there's not it's not an exhaustive list, but those are some of the main definitions that people have given me over the course of the last couple of years. So I'm curious what you think about those and how you would either amend or, you know, or change those or how you would add to those definitions. Yeah.
I go for Juan Zhang's paper that for like Daily Negativity says, for that being, it's better that it ceases to exist. Non-existence is better than existence for that individual sentient being. Now, we're all individual sentient beings, so for all sentient beings, it's better. And that's where the EFILism thing comes in, right? So now, what I would like to add in is that when they talk about suicide, right, people have different reasons to check out the game, right? They say, it's pointless, what the fuck am I doing here? Or they're suffering from some pain or something, so they then choose non-existence over existence. I can see that difference when it comes to suicide and pro-mortalism. All right, but one key thing that nobody gets, the infliction. If you're gonna be alive, you're going to inflict harm. Let's say you're the only being here, and all the other are the animals, like some more animals, and now you realize the game that I'm happy, all that blah blah blah, but all these animals are suffering for me. So that alone is another thing that non-existence is better, because if I'll be alive, I will definitely cause harm. So that's one that's another, like, that makes the position even more stronger. And I don't see, Juwan Hong didn't even mention that in the paper. So it's like the condition of sentience is bad, is negative. Being a sentience on planet is negative. Say no sentience on planet Mars, not negative. So it's just that simple. Again, that's where it links with anti-natalism, right? The Mars argument. And just like there are no future Martians who are missing out or who are suffering from not being alive, the same, there's no future Blaise or future Amanda in some purgatory saying, yeah, Amanda, keep living on. I'm going to be alive in the future. That shit ain't happening, right? So the key is there's no argument against it. There's no, people can't say that death is not an instantaneous death, which I would say to any sentient being, an instantaneous death. How is that not the best thing that could happen to them? That's the counter argument that I would need to get to say, yeah, pro-mortalism is invalid. And there is, I don't think there isn't any counter argument to this fact that for an individual being, an instantaneous death is the best thing that can happen. Now, one can say that, but if the individual dies, then their loved ones are going to be sad and all that. That's where I bring the infliction argument, that you put the loved one's sadness on one scale, and you put the perpetuation of that sentient being's life, the cost of that, on the other scale, and you see where there's more suffering, and then you pick the right answer, which is, yeah, it's better that it's dead. And then you just multiply that with all the other sentient beings. Yeah, it's better that they're dead. For the potential beings, it's best that they're never born. Like, they don't have to, don't make the mess, you won't have to clean up the mess, right? So yes, it's always better. That will always win as better logic. But for the already existing beings, is perpetuation, is a later death better, or is an earlier death better? That's the key distinction. And I can argue that based on the asymmetry and the risk and the futility and the pointlessness of life, it's better that it ceases to exist sooner.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, except that I think that some lives have utility. I think that some lives do end up causing, do have the power to mitigate suffering. And so,
but again, you're presuming for that all the other sentient beings are alive. With pro-mortalism, it applies to all of them, right?
Well, so but again, are we making a distinction between an individual life or I mean, when it comes to something like the red button scenario, where that's a cure, okay, there's no more life coming in at that point. So yes, there's no once it's over, it's over. There's no tomorrow. It's the end of ethics. It's the only way it could matter at that point that those lives have a utility or keep going on is if we are, moron enough to leave something here screaming. Then it would matter. If we leave something behind, yeah, then it's going to matter that we all left except for this one being, screaming. But when we're dealing with a world in which the cycle of sentience is not broken, if we're going to, yeah, okay, it might be better for that individual human. I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but it's still leaving a mess behind where it could have done some amount of good trying to clean it up.
Or it could have made it even more worse. Like you just don't.
It could have.
The brain can be like, there was this case of, I don't remember the guy's name, Robert Alton Harris, I think that was his name.
Mm-hmm.
This guy just went out and started to kill people. Mm-hmm. And like perfectly normal guy, didn't have, like, they were surprised what the fuck happened. So he said when, like, after like death penalty, he was given the death penalty, and he said that, yeah, check my brain.
Right. No, again, it goes back to risk. I get that completely. So what if we had something like, what if Mendham has this great idea, like everybody is born with the right to die. Okay, so everybody is born with the right, and in a culture of advanced directives is a big part of how people live. Like if we can set up trusted people, in our lives to say like, this person doesn't want to fall into, these kinds of brain, whatever, like, I mean, if the person starts acting like they're like not themselves, there's all kinds of safety measures in place to where, our real opinions of what we want done with our lives it's all set up ahead of time. So if something goes wrong, we get that right to die right away. We don't end up having to continue.
It's not even just about that.
In a shitty
like,
state.
It's not even about that. Like you're playing football and you get hit in the head, and the consequence of that happens 5 years later.
Yeah.
That this stuff is real. All these, again, the human brains are really fucked. They can be influenced by the environment in positive and negative ways. So I want to more focus on the negative ways, and I want to prevent that.
I didn't say it very well, but what I was trying to say is, what if like at 18, or I'm just using that as a random age, you say, like, look, this is me now. This is who I am. I am an actualized human being. If I'm hit in the head and it completely changes my personality, I give consent. I want to die. I don't want to be that other person. So you set up all of these safety measures. Like, what if we lived lives like that, where some of these risks were mitigated? I mean, it doesn't take away the risk entirely, but it would mitigate the risk in terms of we wouldn't have to continue to live as those altered versions of ourselves should something like a hit on the head that changes our personality occur. Like, what if we could set those kinds of safety measures in place, and then then we have the right to die? It just, again, we're living in a really broken system, as far as all of this goes. But people, and again, yes, I get it. Exiting that as soon as possible is better for the one that it's most affecting, but the tap isn't turned off and the problems are still going on. So I don't know. I don't know.
Dilemma.
Huh?
It's a hard dilemma.
Yeah.
I see that much. Now, think about it in this way, and it's not just even about that, right? People are influenced by other people too, right? They get involved with a gang or something, and you just fucking lose it. And I've seen this stuff happen, especially with when people are young, right? That's where all the brains are like, that's the maturation of the brain. Yeah. So I say, like, if the younger, now this is where people just think of me as a killer or whatever. I say the younger one goes, the better, because that's where all the maturation is happening, right? So if I can go back in time and kill the 11-year-old Hitler, the collective society, the image about death is very, very weak. Like they're very pussy about death, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's just forget about it. Let's just think we're immortal, and that's not a. We should change the perspective and say that death is inevitable, and let's embrace it. And once they get into that thinking, then they'll start again. Like it's all about the programming at the end of the day, right? In Afghanistan and in Pakistan, these people, they program kids, small little kids, 8-9-year-old kids, to wear the suicide jacket and go blow up the base, and you'll go to heaven. So the kid goes and does it, right? So it's all about the programming. So I think we should change the perception about suicide and death itself, and
100%.
for death. And again, one of the arguments that I get from anti-natalists is that, death is a bad thing, so that's why we say we shouldn't have kids. But as a pro-mortalist, you're saying that is a good thing, so that's counterintuitive or love. And I say, no, dying, the process of dying is bad, and that what anti-natalism prevents, that is good. It prevents dying. But for the existing beings, all of them, it's better that they cease to exist. And even for the individual one, most of them, like 99, like animals. The animals aren't gonna make the red button, right? So
Yeah.
For an individual animal, you see that, yeah, you see an animal, the best thing you can do is just give it an instantaneous death. And that's like, I'll be consistent and honest. That's what I do because I can't kill an animal, right? But I see an insect and I give it an instantaneous death as soon as I can. So I'm like, yeah, that's the win. I'll take it. So one can make the argument that, yeah, as a promortalist, you live on and kill as many insects as you can, give them an instantaneous death. So again, the calculations, they're very hard to do. And because of this uncertainty and this broken system, everybody should say, let's get out as soon as we can. But they're not saying that. They're saying, it'll get better in the future. Yeah, let's just keep perpetuating. We'll become transhumans and this and that.
Yeah.
Do all this. You're like,
No.
the solution.
Yeah. Well, can I ask you real quick, what do you think of David Pierce? So he's a difficult case because he's a transhumanist and an anti-natalist. Do you think that makes any sense? Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Like, I would say, he says that we're going to make the future into a better place. I'll just simply ask this question. I made this argument before too. Okay, you think that in the future, you're actually saying that in the future we'll make it pain-free. But there's a lot of testing that needs to be done to get there. And that testing is going to be done on sentient beings. So would you, David Pierce, would you want to be the rat being vivisected? Can we vivisect you for the transhumanism cause? I don't think so. He's just going to run away when it comes to suffering. So the thing is, the game is prevention of the suffering. The game isn't making life pain-free. That's a pipe dream. That can't happen. And then they say the red button is a pipe dream when it's the climate change is already doing it. Russia, all these people, they already have their fingers on the button. It's just, it's a we're in the doom. We're in the, it's really bad. And that's one thing about pro-mortalism is the ones who get it, the ones that I've talked to, the pro-mortalists that I've talked to, they get it. And they're like, yeah, it's so bad. Like, it's so fucking bad that the best is to die as soon as we can. It's so bad. And that's the pill, the darkest pill that, an intelligent being can swallow. And that's really hard to swallow because people have aspirations and goals and, stuff to do. And they'll just avoid the main thing, that is suffering. The main thing, which they avoid every day, in the sense that, they drink clean water, they have food and all that. Their behavior testifies that suffering is the only thing that matters. Not being discomforted is the only thing that matters. But they'll still play this game of, let's perpetuate life. I have so much to do. What the fuck, dude? There's blood everywhere. And you're saying, no, don't look at it. I have so much to do. I want to live. I want to, even activism, I want to do activism. Like, there's no point. There's no necessity for any of this. There's no necessity for the meat eaters, and there's no necessity for the vegans too. There's both of them don't need to exist. That's one point.
They need to exist so long as there's still problems that need fixing.
Yeah. Again, if you're going to presume that sentient life is still existing, then that's not the goal of promortalism. Promortalism is cessation. Either one is for perpetuation or one is for cessation. That's it. Now, cessation can happen. You start killing people, or you can do the red button thing. Like, if somebody can present me the rational calculations that they start killing people and it triggers a chain of reaction, which will cause the cessation of all life on Earth, yes, go do it. I'll be consistent in my worldview. If somebody will say, now this is where I lose the anti-natalists. If somebody will say to me that I'm going to have a kid and present me the calculations for sure, which is impossible, right? That's the whole point. Present me the calculations for sure that that kid will end sentient life on the planet. I will say you should have that kid.
Oh no, I've made the same argument. If you could prove that your child will be the EFIList janitor who will end sentient life on planet Earth, then yeah, you have to have that child. But obviously, that's an impossible situation. I mean, there's no way of knowing that ahead of time. So thankfully, that that child won't have to be produced.
Even with our own perpetuation of life, there's no way knowing that ahead of time that we'll have a good impact, right?
Well,
so
we're more likely to have
consistency.
We're more likely to have a better impact espousing. We're more likely to have a better impact espousing suffering focused ethics, up to a point. And then there inevitably in every life there comes a point where it's time to go. And that may be sooner rather than later, probably, and I don't disagree with you that for the individual it's always better, unless they disagree. I mean,
I would also say the ideas live on. The ideas will be there. Efil Blaise will check out soon, but the idea of this brain, the things that were spoken out of this brain, they're already in other people's heads, and that will live on. So Efil Blaise will live on. The only thing you can get attached to is some idea. You can't get attached to your physical life and your physical or your ego notions of goal achievements and all that. The only thing that is valuable here is an idea that you can live by. And again, Efilism and Promortalism is the only rational conclusion after you look at life from the objective sense and recognize the value equation, that is, suffering is bad for the individual who's going to experience it objectively. There's where these nihilists come, hey, but that's just you saying. The universe doesn't say that. You fucking idiots. It's about what the intelligent thing to do. It's not about what the dumb universe would do. It's about what the intelligence should do. After recognizing 2 + 2 = 4, after recognizing central nervous system, pain receptors, consciousness, self-awareness, what is the right answer? Should it perpetuate? We only have 2 options, either perpetuate it or either end it. There's no other option. 2 options only. Now, either one is on ending it or one is on perpetuating it. There's no in-betweens. That's how I look at every ethical or philosophical view, like even with atheism and theism, there's no agnostic stuff. This is just bullshit. I think very linear. I have a very linear way of thinking. There's no in-betweens for me. Either one chooses this side or one chooses that side. There's no, you can't make it into a diplomatic bowl, everybody wins kind of thing. That won't happen. It's like the nuclear power plant argument. You can't people who are saying, hey, we don't want to have them, but then there are people who are saying we want to have them. The people who don't want to have them are now at the risk. So we both can't win. You have to be at one thing. You can't just make it win-win for both. And that's the problem with life. There's no win-win situation here. That's the thing. If it's either it's win-win or nobody plays. Either it's win-win or nobody plays. It's that I look at it in that way. And
zero-sum game.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Well, Blaise, as the extinctionist archivist, I will do everything in my power to make sure that Efil Blaise lives on in these videos. Yeah, absolutely. I've spent the last 12 years collecting anti-natalist videos, and I've downloaded all of yours. I'll make sure that as long as it's in my power, people keep watching them. And you're a very important voice. And whether Efil Blaise, the human being, is here tomorrow or stays, I think your words will continue to have an impact, long into the future. And I really want you to know I have tremendous respect for you. And
Yeah,
I think you've done very important work in your time on this planet. So I thank you for what you've done. Yeah.
You have done a lot of important work. The EFIList, that's the like it should be everywhere. It should be fucking like on the box office, and everybody should be watching that. But no, they want to watch.
And they killed the channel it was on, right? They killed my channel.
Yeah.
They took it off of YouTube.
That's
very sweet of you. Blaise. Thank you.
Fuck Google.
It's all right. It's on Vimeo now, so people can go watch it on Vimeo. But no, thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say. It's been my absolute privilege and honor to do the work that I've been able to do on these subjects, and I'm just gonna keep on keeping on until the tide smashes me down. So yeah. All right, Blaise. Well, so do you have any other videos in the works, like, in the near futures, or what's and how can people find you on the internet?
I on YouTube, my channel is Efil Blaise, and if you want to contact me, you can email me on my Gmail, or you can connect with me on Facebook, Blaise AK. And yeah, other than that, in terms of videos, I'm just I don't know, I want to make one perfect video and then just check out. But I just have to get all the the important points and just say it in a way, like English isn't my first, so that's another one of the things that I talk about in the in our being rational about our impact is I can't speak all the languages, and there are a lot of languages being spoken, and what kind of words should be said to influence people. I don't know all of that. So it's as an individual, I can just do my own part, and just make videos and do your obligation to the truth, and just the role of being a whistleblower about what's going to happen if it keeps on perpetuating, and just the messenger of reality. Just give the message, and that's all I can do. So that's I'll do in the upcoming videos as well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for all your work, Blaise, and thank you so much for being my guest today on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Anti-Natalism podcast. This has been Amanda Oldphan Sukenick. You can find me on the YouTube channel Anti-Natal Wolf. Keep up with my daily anti-natalist news updates at Antinatal News on Twitter. Please follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Amazon.com, RSS feed, and so many other platforms. Email me at exploringantinatalism@gmail.com. The podcast website, www.exploringantinatalism.com, was designed by the amazing Visions Noirs. Please follow him at www.bionoir.com and also follow him on Instagram. Logo art by the amazing LifeSucks. Subscribe to him on YouTube and check out his merch at www.etsy.com/shop/LifeSucksPublishing. Music by the wonderful I Doubt It. Subscribe to him on YouTube and check out our collaborative project along with our friend EFIL WV, The Right to No Longer Exist, which includes the podcast, The Right to No Longer Exist, A Right to Die podcast. All the best, and bye for now.